Okay, it's 1 p.m. in Finland, it's 12 o'clock noon at Central European Time Zone. Welcome to a Manna Insect Q&A session. During these monthly Q&A sessions, you have a chance to ask one of our experts questions related either to a specific topic, like today, or you can freely ask anything that bothers you regarding insect farming. If you want advice on a general level on for example black soldier fly farming. Today, our expert is the Manna Insect founder and CEO Ykä Marjanen, whom I will interview a little bit later. But before we get Ykä on board, a couple of pointers. First of all, we have these monthly Q&A sessions, so remember to join up front, or you can find typically the session link at the Insect Farm Hub if you are a Manna customer or a pro subscriber at the Insect Farm Hub. Sometimes we also share these pro and premium sessions for free for other participants, like we've just done today at the specific troubleshooting BSF WhatsApp group. Perhaps some of you will be joining us from there as well. We have monthly free webinars, which are with varying topics. So there's every time a different topic. And then we have monthly premium presentations, premium webinars, where typically one of our experts digs deeper into a specific topic, and then we have these Q&A sessions. Our Q&A sessions and the pro webinars are both for the Manna Insect customers and Insect Farm Hub premium subscribers. If you haven't done that, if you haven't subscribed yet, then please do so. If you are a Insect Farm Hub free user, like most of our users are, then you will have direct access to all the free webinars and the webinar archive at the Insect Farm Hub. Remember to join up front so that you will get the calendar and reminder links for your perusal. Today's topic is related to commercializing BSF and frass, and our expert is Ykä Marjanen. Ykä, welcome on board. We have a few people live, but mostly people will be joining our sessions as a recording viewers, and for that purpose, we will also be creating a podcast summary of this session. Welcome, Ykä. Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So the topic is where and whom to sell BSF larvae and frass. If we start with larvae, of course there is the chance that you are a backyard farmer or a hobbyist. Then you may have a small chicken farm where you use the larvae yourself. It may be interesting for you to scale it up a little bit and then start professional commercial production and then perhaps even to scale it to something bigger. But what are the options for an individual BSF farmer to start selling their BSF products?
Actually, it's kind of the $1 million question, and it's one of the challenges in our industry is that if you start farming and there's enough challenges regarding learning how to grow and creating a stable process and so on, but there's also the challenge of how do you sell, who do you sell, and what type of product do you do after you get the larvae out of the trays. Now, in theory, there's many options for you to do, starting from live larvae and then dried larvae, and then oil and fat, the oil and fat separated from the larvae, which is BSF meal, and then you have oil product. And then you can go all the way to, specialized nutrition or hygiene and these kind of things. But I would say this just makes it more challenging and confusing because most of the time the post-processing would require significant and serious investment. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's make it simple. It's the larvae is really meant for chickens, and either drop like live larvae or whole dried larvae. Those are the things you can do at small scale with hundreds of dollars, maybe a few $1,000 investments to a fairly large levels, like up to several tons a month. So in practice, you should find chicken growers that are as close as possible, and then talk to them about either live larvae, which is typically good for egg-laying hens, as a kind of like a how do you say, it's this kind of additional food that makes them happy, that they can hunt larvae and they get a couple % of their nutrition from there. Or then for broilers and these, you would just replace soy meal with the whole dried larvae. So that's kind of simplifying, and that's really the only practical thing you can do as an insect farmer regarding the post-processing phase. Unfortunately, there's very little or few places where anyone's interested to buy bulk live larvae or whole dried larvae so that they can then create their own products.
So what you're saying is that live larvae would be the best option, and then distributing it locally. Now, most insect farmers that I've heard of dream of becoming millionaires. And I mean, it's great to have dreams, but the reality is likely that then the post-production costs also increase if you try to produce something more advanced, so to say, from the larvae. So what about drying or freezing? Does it make sense from a business case point of view? It would at least on theory then give you options to then distribute it more widely, right?
Yeah, that's so. If you compare and start, I think we've kind of started from the wrong foot of making BSF production somehow too complicated or too big and too industrial. But if you're really thinking it's animal growing, and you should compare like chicken farmers, and how many chicken farmers have large post-production sets or huge automated factories and tens of employees. That's only let's say less than %. Most chicken farmers are one-man show. They might have a couple helpers, and they have enough chickens that they can do it, and they focus on growing and minimal post-processing. So that is more equivalent and more analogous also to BSF farming. And in that case, you cannot really invest that much on post-processing, because it's not about just machine costs. It's actually that you start to need very high-level educated people to understand amino acid profiles and all that. And I just don't think that's for the growers. That should be a separate company. Unfortunately, the insect industry is young enough that we don't have this ecosystem where you just you just sell your bulk larvae to someone who will then post-process and create a lot of different products out of that. So you kind of have to go to the end customer, and the end customer in this case is a grower also. And that's why the kind of best compromise at the moment, if you want to make money, but you're not making a factory, which I don't think doesn't make sense anyway, your best option is to sell directly to chicken farmers, either live or then whole dried. Whole dried is probably the most optimal product, because then you can store it, you can ship it, and yeah, you can kind of gather more of it and then sell it as a bigger bulk.
That's a really interesting analogy from the traditional animal farming, where lots of producers have a set contract with a bigger post-processing operator, who's then collecting all and basically buying all the production, and then you agree to a certain production level and quality, and then they will do the job. You have a set price already, and you know that everything that you produce will be sold anyway. But this kind of contract farming is not present at the insect farming industry, at least not yet. Do you think that's the sort of where we're heading with this industry?
Well, we should be heading at least, and we are of course doing our part of making the farming, meaning the growing of the larvae, easy enough that anyone can join, and there will be a let's say a field of farmers that you can then create something regarding post production as a company, and then get contract farmers around your area. Everything needs to be as local as possible. Like if you look at chicken farmers and chicken growing, the whole ecosystem is within driving distance from getting the chicks, the feed, those companies who sell the feed and deliver the feed to those companies that they can then go and pick up the hens, or the eggs, or either the broilers, and then post process those even to the supermarkets that are selling those. That part of course can be that they travel to another part of the world. But unfortunately our industry is so young that we just have very little supportive systems around that, and then thus you need to make, as a BSF grower, you need to be responsible for setting the price and actually making the product to sell. And that's why we basically advocate and want to simplify it. It's for chickens, it's whole dried or live larvae, and you can directly sell it at a price where the chicken grower will actually see cost benefits compared to buying fish meal and soy meal.
Okay, so you're saying that insect farming and selling the products should take place locally, but it's an opportunity globally, as there are chicken farms basically everywhere, all over the world, right?
Yeah, so
Globally, locally.
yeah, and it's the biggest challenge with BSF is that the whole idea of that, why would you grow insects, and the advantage of BSF is that it eats practically anything, and it should eat bio waste that is otherwise unusable or a problem. And that gives the competitive advantage because you can feed it something that you get it for free. If you start chicken growing, the biggest cost you have on your operation is the feed. It's about 70 to even 80% of your total costs. And there's nothing really you can do. You have to really buy like commercial or high quality protein and soy meal. And that's why, of course, the BSF business is there's a big opportunity, because if you do it locally, if you use practically free substrates, you can produce the protein that the chickens need at a cheaper price than the soy meal and the commercial feed, but it's high quality. Thus, it's animal protein compared to plant protein. So this is the opportunity, but everything has to be local. And the first things you have to do, of course, is to find the substrate sources that gives you the price advantage so that you can then sell. But in this case, you need to be more entrepreneur than a normal chicken grower or other animal growers, because there's no set prices. There's no entities that will just buy whatever you produce, and you don't have to worry about selling it. You have to now first, at least, go there and get your own customers, and then maybe later, if there's enough of those, you can, either you or someone else can set a post-processing facility that will then start to pool everyone else's larvae to one place, and then you can start selling. Maybe even a corporation. This is kind of what we are part of, is helping different regions and players to form corporations where they can kind of together do the post processing.
Hey, we are sometimes approached by people who consider producing insects and especially black soldier fly larvae for aquaculture and for fish feed, and there's a lot of research that BSF larvae is very good for Atlantic salmon and trout and shrimps and tilapia and plenty of other um, fish and shrimp species. Even I think even some of the clams are able to consume BSF larvae as a very sort of natural food source. But is fish feed a really great business opportunity, or is it just looks good on paper, but it doesn't really happen, or a price point is not there? What do you think?
It it seems so. I again, I'm not like that much of an expert other than what I've seen and what I've heard. The challenge is that if you want to be BSF producer, if you want to make a livelihood out of growing BSF, beyond chickens, all the other require much more knowledge, much more details, and then also the substrate sources and these start to matter, and the nutritional value and all that. So as a farmer, I would focus on the chickens because they're so much easier products. And then I would try to find within your region or area, or at least within your country, someone who has more knowledge and would be interested to buy your BSF larvae and then convert those into those products. There is a market for fish feed, is a market for aquaculture, but converting BSF into a competitive uh, product with the nutritional requirements, I think it's beyond it's a beyond of capabilities of a BSF farm, and we really want to make BSF farming easy so that anyone can start farming. And that basically means that if you sell your own products and you don't have anyone who can post process that and get a bigger value out of that, then your kind of best bet is to sell to local chicken growers. And that's it. Like the aquaculture and everything else is potential, but I just it just goes beyond if you want to be a farmer. There's too many things, and even companies who've received and raised millions and millions of dollars are struggling to make that product work.
Hey, what about frass then? Frass is the byproduct of insect farming, and we know that mealworm farming as well as BSF farming both produce that can be used for soil health and soil remediation and in regenerative agriculture. But what about the frass as a business case? I mean, who would you sell it? What's the money? Could you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, frass is also something that easily looks easy and good on paper, but the more detail and more you go into it, you actually find that it's pretty challenging. Especially again, I want to kind of emphasize that our experience is that you either, for you to make money and get a livelihood and not take like let's say unnecessary risks, you have to focus on either being a grower or then being a post processor or being a distributor or then being an egg producer for that. And unfortunately, at the moment, if you are alone in any region or the only thing you can really do is to combine growing and of course breeding and then um, selling the larvae itself. And that makes it kind of difficult for you to continue continue going further in the chain. Um, can you also, Tom, repeat the end of the question or the question part? I forgot
Yeah,
the
so
kind of the.
so regarding frass, I mean, there's especially BSF frass, but also mealworm frass is considered to be great for soil health and soil remediation and so forth. But what is the business case there? Whom to sell? What's the price point?
Yeah.
Just generally, could you explain what the frass business case is all about?
Yeah, so the frass is kind of the similar in that sense, is that it is good fertilizer. It has the raw ingredients to be a good fertilizer. But then when you start thinking about fertilizer and you start asking about, the different customers have very different demands on the NPK values, the content, the how it's post processed, the how dry it is, and then also how much you need. So actually, you get into a situation where most likely none of the customer requirements you can match, because either you have customers who are happy with the bulk NPK values that you produce, but then they say that, hey, I need 100 tons a month. And 100 tons frass means that you need to produce, at the level of 200 tons of live larvae, and it gets a lot. And then if you're talking consumers and these where you just need like small quantities, then the NPK and the fertilizers are specialized to special plant, like flowers or strawberries or something like that. And so it kind of goes into a level that it's very hard for you to find a customer that you can just sell the frass as is. You would either need someone who knows what to do with that and then create those products for consumers and these, or the other option is that you just sell it to someone who knows how to use it on their own thing, or then you just use it yourself. But yeah, frass has a lot of potential, but the more you get into it and talk to customers, the more it kind of becomes challenging. In frass, similar with the frass, with the larvae, it would be most optimal if there would be a company within a country or region that focuses on converting frass into products and just focuses on post processing and creating those products and references of those products, and then rely on contract farmers to buy the frass. And the farmers would, of course, benefit because now they just sell the frass to someone who knows how to convert that into a value. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I don't know any company that would specialize in frass or the frass products or buying BSF frass and converting those into products. So that's why actually at the moment, frass is very hard to create additional value as a farmer. Unfortunately, we're kind of working on this as well in the marketplace, and these try to match people and the companies who use frass and know how to convert that into higher value. But at the moment, yeah, unfortunately, frass is a little bit underutilized product.
There's of course been a lot of discussion regarding frass over the years, and the general idea seems to be that it would be great if you could sell it in bulk, and then you could just distribute it locally, but you would get a higher price point selling in small bags, even through a web shop or whatever. But do you see in the long term frass becoming a real opportunity rather than just an underutilized opportunity what is at the moment? I mean, is the market going towards the direction where we can expect frass to really make any change, especially considering that well, people and organizations do not pay sustainability premium, but there is the sustainability aspect as well, especially for like local horticulture hobbies or whatever.
I mean, there are companies working on it, and I know there are companies that even have commercial consumer products that are selling, and it's still too early to say and see if they can prove and show that it's a profitable business. But I see that happening maybe within a year or so in few countries, mainly in Western countries. So there is research on it, but at the moment, let's say I would rely. I would kind of try to find a more local use case on it. Maybe contact the local horticulture or these, let's say, green thumb people who are very into the whole gardening and these, and then work with them and say, hey, we have this frass. Can you get it? I mean, we'll give it to you for free. Can you do tests with different mixes and see and kind of give us a reference of how well it grows? And if you find those kind of references and you see that maybe roses or something grow very well, then you can start using that as an advertisement and maybe do a deal with these people and say that let's create a product out of that. Unfortunately, at least in the next couple of years, you have to do that yourself. The bigger companies who sell frass and these, they don't give any information on their products and these, so they're not going to help. And this is a little bit our industry's biggest problem, is that we're not sharing information. So everyone has to kind of figure it out themselves. And of course, it takes money and time, and no one wants to share. It might change, but I haven't seen like the last 5 years huge progress on commercial frass products and information to commercialize frass, unfortunately. But again, we've tested our own frass, and the NPK values are very good. It's really a fertilizer. It's not like a compost. So there is that potential, but you have to know more, or you have to find someone who knows more.
All right, excellent. Now let's give a shout out to our live attendees. If you have any questions for Ykä, feel free to add those to the chat section or the question section, and I will then read those out loud to him. But in the meantime, if you don't have any questions, we still have time to ask Ykä several questions from what's been asked us previously. And one of the questions relates to the new Insect Farm Hub and the marketplace. Now, Insect Farm Hub is a novel platform for all things insect farming, and it has a marketplace with roughly a dozen sellers at the moment and a couple of thousand users. Could you tell us a little bit about the marketplace and the opportunity that it has for BSF farmers to distribute their products?
So that's another, let's say, challenge that we identified, is that if you are even in, I mean, there surprisingly many in some countries are doing some level of BSF farming. But if you start one, it's very hard for you to know where they are, who they are, and connect. Or that you find places where you can then start selling it and advertise that, hey, I have this amount of quantity and get it. So what we wanted to do now, it's kind of like a version 0.1 of a marketplace where you can put your products to sell, and then you can advertise it to chicken growers and say, if you go to Insect Farm Hub, you can order from me. And that just makes it easier than instead of you, just, changing emails or WhatsApp or something. It's a place where you can do. And then this is a little bit the counterintuitive part. Like, unfortunately, most people and farmers are very jealous or very protective of not sharing details or being where others are. But that just doesn't work, because those buyers who want to buy larvae, they're not convinced buying from you if you're the only one who produces it, even though they want to buy from you, but it's too risky to rely on just one farmer. But if they find in a marketplace that there's 10 or 20 farmers that they could buy, they're much more confident to buy from you, because they know that, okay, if you don't sell, or there's something going on, or there's too little, or they need more, they can go and buy more. So that's the purpose of marketplace. Instead of the buyer trying to figure out 5 different sources himself, and the seller trying to figure out 5 different buyers himself, marketplace brings both together, and you just focus on announcing your own products and then basically advertising that I'm selling through that. And the more they see buyers and the more they see sellers in one place, the more you will get buyers and then you will get sellers. And that's how you kind of start the positive loop. And so far, there's not been such a place. And that's why we, in part of the Insect Farm Hub, we created the marketplace. And it's completely free. You can just go and put it. Now it's completely new thing, and you will be a pioneer if you do it. And there's not going to be hundreds of buyers and these yet, but please put it, because you're kind of part of the positive cycle. And then we have already almost 10,000 people in our newsletters and these, so we start advertising the marketplace through that. And if you're the first ones, like anyone in any social media platform or anything, you know that the first ones always get the biggest benefit.
Okay. We have a question from Pia. Pia is asking, is frass a possibility for aquafeed as well? Is there a use case, or is it just a nice side product when you're feeding your larvae to fish? But does frass play a part in aquafeed business as well?
I don't know. Like frass is a little bit different. I mean, it in principle, if you're comparing to chicken growing, you have two outputs of chicken growing. You have the chicken and the meat, and then you have the manure of the chicken. And of course, frass is insect manure, but frass, that's why it's called frass and not manure. It's that there is differences in it. The NPK and the bacteria, and these it's much more, let's say, safe to use. And in some cases, I've seen that it's either fed back to larvae, or it can be fed even to chickens and put as part of the feed. So in that principle, it could be a product in aquaculture as well. But I'm not sure on the details. And then I think it gets into the safety regulations and people's kind of feelings and these kind of things as well. If the fish is then sold to humans, and it's fed with frass and these kind of things. So I think functionally, the potential is there, and the kind of the value is there. But I think, like, in practice, I would kind of just consider separating the frass and the larvae as different products, and frass to be more like fertilizer product. Or actually, frass can be used as a drying material to the next batch of larvae. If your substrate is very wet, you can use the frass from previous batches to dry up a little bit so that the larvae are not swimming. That's actually an excellent kind of internal use case of the frass.
Do you have also examples of frass prices or price point? Generally, what frass goes at the moment?
Frass is totally impossible to define any prices, because different substrates and your different recipe. So if you have a good recipe, you actually get less frass, but it's higher NPK values. If you have not so good recipe, you get a lot of frass, but a lot of frass means that there's parts of the waste that hasn't been eaten, and it's kind of semi-digested food, and that's bad. So it's very hard to put a price on frass. The only way you can do the pricing is that you get frass, you take a lab sample, and then you compare the NPK values to the locally sold organic fertilizers, and you get an idea that how much you can get for it. And then you kind of compare, like, the products that are sold like 1 kilo and then 5 kilos and 10 kilo bags to consumers and to, let's say, professionals, and you start to get a sense. But unfortunately, again, this is why BSF farming is still a pioneering work and challenge, because you need to do all that thing yourself. Most likely in your country, there's no one or no references of you to compare, or there's no organization that knows. What comes to larvae, it's a little bit easier, because larvae, basically, regardless of how you feed the larvae, what substrate, if you have a larvae that weighs 200 milligrams, the nutritional macro content, meaning protein, fat, and carbs, is about the same in that sense. And then if you compete against soy meal, which I think is the only practical thing to compete against when you're talking to animal growers, you don't have to kind of go into the lab. You're sending it as a bulk protein source. And then effectively live larvae, you need 2 kilos of live larvae to combat 1 kilo of soy meal. That's about the effective thing. So now you have a very good price ratio. And for whole dried larvae, it's about 3 kilos of live larvae goes into 1 kilo of whole dried larvae. The protein levels go to about 50%. That does require a little bit of you doing some level of lab analysis, because it depends on your drying process. How much do you dry? How much protein there will be? Because the drying doesn't actually, the only thing drying does is that it removes the water, and of course, does the protein, like relative protein content will increase. But the protein price is, I would say, it's 1.3 times the soy meal protein. So if you're just comparing crude protein, the larvae protein is better than soy meal. I would put like 1.3 times the protein content. So if you have 500 grams of protein, you can compare it to 500 grams of soy meal. Price times 1.3, you get the same effective quality.
And the price comparison in most cases seems to be with soy meal or fish meal, right? These are the sort of comparisons, especially in the animal feed industry.
Yeah, I mean, fish meal. This is again, I think, like I might be a little bit controversial and try to be kind of honest and not kind of, let's say, try to increase the value unnecessarily. It's like BSF is not fish meal quality. I just have to say. And if you want to make it fish meal quality, meaning about 60% protein content, all the micronutrients and everything that you get from fish meal, the amount of post-processing and the quality of post-processing you have to do with a high quality homogeneous substrate source, you will not get the fish meal price. So it's catch 2020. If you want to beat fish meal or be fish meal quality, you will have to use methods and equipment and personnel that you will not beat the price. You have to remember that how fish meal is made is that there are fishing boats that actually go out to sea and get free fish, basically, because it's been fed by the sea on itself, and they're brought to the shore and then they're crushed and dried. Now, if you're thinking BSF, it's much more laborious work, and you have to pay for the substrate and growing and everything. So I think it's unnecessary and everything makes too hard to try to beat or compete with fish meal. The price, of course, is lucrative because fish meal price is about like $1,500 per ton, while the soy meal is about $400 a ton. So, but in practice, and I definitely stand on this, even though I'm not very popular saying this, we are at the level BSF, whole dried larvae BSF is that 1.3 times the price of soy meal with the equivalent protein quantity, and that's about it. So whole dried larvae, it's 700. I would say $700 per ton for whole dried, good quality whole dried larvae that you can still do in small scale by a farmer yourself. That's the price level you will get. And that's and that's something that you can go and talk to chicken farmers, and actually they will see the results and they will be happy, most likely. But if you try to get fish meal level prices and all that, you will spend so much time and energy, and you're more like $2,000 per ton level anyway, not $1,500 a ton, that it kind of gets to a level where I just don't see, that's kind of like a no man's land.
Right. We did get another question on the prices, but I think you kind of kind of answered that already. Just to confirm, um, how much is the price variation between countries or regions on both frass as well as the larvae? I mean, these, of course, there's like you mentioned, the frass quality and so forth. But are these prices sort of comparable globally, or are there differences because of, for example, the need for a better local like fertilizer, or perhaps availability of soy? How sort of global are the price levels, or are there certain regions that are more lucrative opportunities than others?
I mean, from farmer point of view, in that you don't have to worry about global prices. You have to worry about your customers' local prices. And this is, of course, there's different subsidies, different arrangements between countries and these. So every country has a different price for soy meal. Like what there's a global price for soy meal, but there's a local price that you can actually get. So my first thing, like what we advise and guide all our customers and users in Insect Farm Hub and in our consultancy, when they start, to go first, talk to customers, local customers. Don't try to sell to another country and these. You're selling to first couple hundred kilometers from your facility, and ask them, what is your price that you pay for your quantity that you're buying soy meal? There are customers who buy 10 tons a month. Then there are customers who buy 100 tons a month. And of course, those who buy 100 tons a month soy meal, or their animal feed that has the soy meal mixed in, they get, of course, discount. So you should find those customers who struggle because they have smaller quantities, they pay higher price. And then if you know that price, you basically know the price level that you can sell. It has to match that price or be lower. That's it. It's that easy. In some cases, the soy meal, in some countries, soy meal is double the price that it's in some countries. Like Caribbean islands, you pay almost double the functional price for the soy meal ton that you pay, in example, in Europe, because Europe is highly subsidizing soy meal, and it has free trade agreement with Brazil on soy and these. But some parts of Africa and Asia and these, it varies a lot. But that's kind of the first thing. You just go and ask your potential future customers, animal growers, how much is the feed cost that they have, and then what is the soy meal price, and what is the protein content in that. That's your price. It's the same for the frass. You just go and look at, if you buy 10 kilos or 5 kilo bag of organic fertilizer, what is the cost? And then you look at the NPK values, and you can start kind of getting a sense of what is the opportunity to sell in your country. The only thing that you should care about is price, being price/functional competitive to these locally sold other alternatives. That's why it's unnecessary to look at what is the larvae price globally or frass price globally. It doesn't matter to your local customers. Only matters is what is their alternative that they're now using. What is their price?
Excellent. We did have another question from David regarding the same thing, especially regarding Kenya. I'm not sure if you're familiar with frass market in Kenya, but apparently government is subsidizing on the fertilizer, and the frass business potential there may be of great interest to David. Do you have any comment on the local frass market in Kenya? I know it's a quite a specialized thing, but I don't know if you have any experience of that.
I mean, like one of the, let's say, few countries where we have a lot of, let's say, practical experience is Kenya and the East African countries, because we've been there many times. My colleagues have lived there for 6 months. We have customers there. So I still think that what I've heard and seen, there's no frass market per se, that you would be just easily buying frass. There are bigger players like Chansi and Synergy and these in that area, and I'm not 100% sure where they sell their frass. but I know that everyone struggles there to get this kind of marketplace where you have buyers and sellers. And for buyers, it's easy to just go and say, I want to buy 20 tons. Now, I think it's still that you have to find your own sellers if you're a buyer. And for a seller, you have to do for the same. And it's very hard when you have to match the need. So someone's going to get a shorthand in either side in that. And and there's not that many that actually post process the frass and make it as a product. So you get very wild numbers, or the prices from $50 a ton to $300 a ton. But there's so many if and small detail things that makes it very hard to compare the price. So, but it's another thing that we are in many especially East African countries, with people trying to kind of help solving these kind of issues. And unfortunately, this is what the BSF farmers face every day. And I don't want to make it sound, for those who listen to this and are not BSF farmers, I don't want to make this sound too easy and lucrative, but there is that potential, but there's a lot more work compared to if you would be a chicken farmer today, where you sell your products and who to sell, and somehow a global price that you can kind of follow. Everything is local, and you kind of need to get the sense of the price potential, because this, again, it's like it doesn't matter what they sell larvae in India or South America, because your customer will not buy larvae from India or South America. It's going to be anyway too expensive. You are the local seller, and you're the only one who can make it competitive. So they're comparing what they have to pay for the animal feed, and the question is that can they lower their feed cost per every kilo of chicken that they produce? It's actually very simple at the end how they make decisions. It's just the feed cost per kilo of chicken meat has to be lower than what it is now, and they're always happy to test or be interested in products that make it lower.
Okay. Now, seems like the whole insect farming industry is sort of like a fluff pillow, but there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of calculations and theories and sustainability and whatnot. But at the very practical level, it's all about what your local customers are willing to pay, and how, does it make their product and their end product better, or is it cheaper to produce because of what you're able to provide them. But there's still quite a few people and organizations that are dreaming of factory level operations and tens of tons or hundreds of tons of waste being converted into something valuable. But these business cases are apparently not quite there yet on a very practical level. But what about the sort of odd new things, lots of fuzz around bio oils or biodiesel or using chitin for biomedical or bioplastic or even cosmetics industries? Are these just big dreams in the future, or is there any base to start investigating these business opportunities quite yet?
I would say, like, I think there's like, my personal feeling is that BSF is advantaged in two sectors. One is that you do it like bulk protein at low cost as possible at micro and small scale. That I've seen that actually works, and also in regions where the legislation is not so bureaucratic than in like European Union. That works. The other potential I see, which I have less of, let's say, knowledge and experience, but I do believe the potential is that when you go to the other extreme end of extracting insulin or bio oil or these kind of extremely specialized cases, and then you can do it in different areas. But if you would be interested in those areas, I would wait, because there are companies that have received several millions of dollars, and wait to see if they prove it or not. Yes, they have a small advantage because they've started earlier, but the number of bio oil tons that are needed, there's no one company that can take it. Like if we're looking at the food production and industry in the world, how many years it's been going on and how many big players. There's like dozens of large scale players and thousands of small scale players. No one has been able to take the market. Food market is too big for anyone to take. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But again, I just feel that these talk about thousands of tons, and these are mainly people who want to be entrepreneurs and not farmers. They want to make money, and they see the opportunity, and they want to make big bets and get big funding and all that, because you talk millions, and then people of course listen to you, and investors. But what I'm talking more is the actual art and livelihood and profession of farming and farmers. And those people don't need VCs or angel investors, millions of dollars. They want to make livelihood for their family, live in their country. And we want to make BSF farming as an opportunity and a livelihood for anyone with as small risk as possible. That's our main job. So that's why we focus more on very, very micro level practical things that you can do with few hundred or few $1,000 investment, and you can make enough money that you can live in, example, in developing countries with, let's say, $500 a month, to a more developed country of like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month. And you do the main work, and maybe you hire a couple people. And then after that, you can scale as much as you want. But unless you do this phase, talking tens of thousands of tons, you will need millions of dollars. And then the question is that, do you get those millions of dollars?
We have one more question from Rui. I think we're sort of covered this, but perhaps I can rephrase his question. Rui is asking, is it a good idea to produce BSFL for biodiesel from waste management? But now that we've already sort of touched a little bit about the bio-oils and biodiesel part, and it's not quite there yet. But what about the waste management part? I mean, some people do get most of their insect farming income from from a waste management point of view, and then whatever comes out as a frass or the BSF is then sort of like an additional business case. What about the waste management? Is it easy or perhaps relevant to start selling insect or doing insect farming because you want to do the waste management part and your money out of that?
It's kind of it is a business opportunity, and there are companies doing it. Again, it comes down to what is the current business environment in your region regarding waste management. Like, what if you go to ask supermarkets, what is the price that they pay for bio waste management? Who is taking care of that? And are there any problems with that? Or are there regulations for the waste companies, and they're struggling with the bio waste costs and these? Then you have an opportunity. But if your country or within your region's company says, I don't care, it's free, or we just dump it in the ground and these kind of things, then you don't have a bio waste management business. So it comes down to, you need to know the opportunities in your local region and what is the current de facto service and what are the problems with that. If there's a price problem, then you need to check if you can price compete. If there's a sustainability problem, that even though it's cheap to put it in the, like, let's say in Europe and Finland, I mean, we are one of the worst cases because we have the highest, one of the highest regulations on bio-waste. But for now, example, in Finland, you have to pay $100 or a ton for getting rid of your bio waste. Now, you can easily make money out of BSF after $50 a ton. And that could be a business here. But of course, you have to make the cost of growing and all that as competitive as possible. And now the EU regulations basically say that by 2030, every EU country, no bio waste can go unrecycled. So every bio waste kilo has to be recycled. So there's an opportunity in a developed country here because the regulation basically say that regardless if it's costly or not, you have to do it. If you go to developing countries, like in Africa and these, I think it's less of a mandate that you have to do that. So people are not really paying for bio waste. So I think the more developed and more regulated country, the bio waste handling business, recycling business is bigger opportunity with BSF. And the more developing country you are and go, the more the selling larvae to replace soy meal is the potential. That would be kind of like the bigger scale, let's say, recommendation or my feeling of the opportunity with the BSF. And then on the side, the frass is kind of a potential to get extra income.
Excellent. Thank you, Ykä. We've spent almost a full hour now, and unfortunately, we need to wrap up at this point. For those viewing our session live, thank you for joining, and thanks for all the questions we got from you. And those checking this recording from the recording, then please do join us in the next live session. The free webinars, the pro webinars, and Q&A sessions are all live sessions, but especially the Q&As are the possibility to ask questions from our experts. A couple of last pointers. First of all, do remember to sign up for the Insect Farm Hub, which is absolutely for free. There's a lot of free features, lots of free content and tools, webinar archives, and so forth. There's a new podcast series. Also, today's session will be summarized with AI and produced as a podcast and will be distributed at some point. And then, of course, do add your products or services or purchasing ads to our marketplace, which is also available for free at the Insect Farm Hub. And hopefully the purchasing features will be added very soon, but already you're able to see who's selling what for what price, and you're able to add your own sales ad for free. Absolutely no cost, no credit cards, no commissions whatsoever. So do take advantage of that. And on the other note, please do ask your friends to join the Insect Farm Hub as well. The more people there's on board, the more those will benefit who are selling or buying or generally taking advantage of the tool. Thank you for joining. See you again in a 2 weeks time in our next webinar. Thank you, Ykä, and we'll see you very soon again. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.